Hi, this is Eric Bischoff, and you're listening to Count It Out with Mike and Tyler.
This episode of Count It Out with Mike and Tyler is provided by Cottage Springs.
Listening to Count It Out with Mike and Tyler.
Well, we are live, pals, and welcome to another edition of the Bill After Sealed of Approved, provided by Cottage Springs. Count It Out with Mike and Tyler. My name is Tyler. I am joined, as always, by my favorite Springer over there, one and only Mike. Mike, tell the people about this amazing show we have for you today.
Just like last week, man, we have another legend on the show. You can go back to WCW. You can go back just the last several years of TNA. We have one of the greatest ring announcers of all time on the show for the second time on the show, and he's got a book to promote. We have Dave Penzer talking to us today.
That's right.
This is a great talk we're about to have.
We're about to sit ringside with Dave Penzer, hence the name of his new book, Sitting Ringside, pun intended. But before we do that, we got to talk about the Cottage Springs Punch Out of the Week. And now, the Cottage Springs Punch Out of the Week. Find your favorite flavors at cottagesprings.ca. All right, so Cottage Springs Punch Out of the Week this week. We are going to go back to this weekend's AEW pay-per-view and the crowning of a brand new AEW World Champion in Swerve Strickland. Mike, I know you haven't been watching AEW a whole lot lately, neither have I, but what do you think about the rise of Mr. Swerve Strickland and the dancing of Prince Nana?
Oh, I think it's great. It's one of the things that I do like that comes into AEW. I think Swerve is a star, and I thought that in his WWE days. I think Swerve is a massive star. Did I have him becoming the world champion on my bingo card this early into the year? Absolutely not. I did not. Did I think he was going to win the match on the weekend? No, I didn't. Am I happy he did? Yeah, of course, because we need a fresh face of champions right now in wrestling in general. So to have this new champion, this new era, I like it. And I could go on and on about Prince Nana. Prince Nana is one of the most entertaining people in professional wrestling today. Love it.
I'll tell you, I sat down last night. I watched some of this pay-per-view. I know I was drinking these last week, but these Springers, as my camera goes out of focus, they're phenomenal. And I'm definitely going to be having a few of them when I'm talking to Mr. Penzer in just a couple of minutes here. But I loved everything about what Swerve is doing right now.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. I wasn't a big fan of his in the WWE. I didn't like the whole hit row thing. Wasn't my cup of tea. But ever since they paired him up with Prince Nana, things have been taking off to a whole nother level. Nana's got the dance going, which is great. Swerve came out dressed up like Black Panther last night, like full gear. And then he hit like this pose on his knees. And in this beautiful tribute to Jimmy Rave, Prince Nana came out holding Jimmy Rave's old embassy jacket and put it over his shoulders. You know, we sit here and sing the praises of Swerve Strickland. This was definitely the time to put the title on him. But let's not take away from one of the most underrated wrestlers of all time, Samoa Joe. I want to give Joe some flowers right now. This guy is one of the greatest Ring of Honor champions, if not the greatest Ring of Honor champion of all time. It's a fantastic NXT champion.
Voted as the greatest Ring of Honor champion on our show.
Absolutely, right? NXT World Championship run, great run in the WWE. Now the AEW World Champion. Samoa Joe is going to be one of those guys that doesn't get enough love when we look back in the annals of time of professional wrestling. But he's got to be in that conversation of one of the best big men of all time, if not the best big man of all time. This incredible body of work, and I think this is going to be a world title reign that was really slept on as well, because Joe did a phenomenal job as champion.
Was he probably one of the shortest reigns?
He's got to be up there for sure,
Up
but
there
he did his purpose.
with Hangman. Yeah.
Well, you know what though? We don't need another super long reign right now. Like
No.
MJF just had the belt for over a year. Joe
Yeah.
got some good heat off of beating MJF for it, and
Mhm.
he was the right guy to put over Swerve Strickland. And now it's time to see what Swerve can do. I don't know if we get a long reign for it. I mean, Swerve Strickland and Will Ospreay in Wembley Stadium sounds like a big money match for the AEW World Heavyweight Championship. But
Yeah.
maybe there's some other big money matches that people want to see Will Ospreay at Wembley Stadium as well. Who knows? But
If and when MJF comes back, him and Swerve, that's money right there. You have former champions that can still go up against Swerve. You know,
well, Hangman
Chris Jericho,
Page is right there.
Hangman's right there.
They've
Chris
got a
Jericho
history.
knows how to put people over. You know what I mean? There's a lot of people that can make Swerve into a bigger star than he already is. I like, this is one of the rare times I'm going to say something good about AEW and say that this was the right move for this company.
Absolutely. And the last pay-per-view there was a very good step for the direction of AEW. This was going to be probably one of the hardest pay-per-views to beat for pay-per-view of the year, from top to bottom. Every match delivered. AEW needed this because pretty much every match delivered. Like I know the Young Bucks match you weren't a big fan of. The match was really good from what I've watched of it. I've got a little bit more to watch. Jack Perry to be determined. This is going to be a big thing for him. Is this CM Punk stuff going to take off for him, or is it going to bury him? It's up to him at this point now, because this video, they got people talking about him. So let's see what you got, AEW. But I mean, top to bottom, this was a spectacular pay-per-view. And AEW needed it coming off of a pretty rough media week there. So
Yeah,
because of all of these moments, Swerve Strickland, AEW, you are my Cottage Spring punch out of the week.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is David Penzer, former WCW and Impact ring announcer, and you are listening to Count It Out with Mike and Tyler.
Joining us today is one of the most recognizable voices in all of professional wrestling. He is the former ring announcer for WCW and Impact/TNA Wrestling. He was the very third guest that we've ever had on this show 4 years ago, and 200 episodes later. Please welcome back to the show the one and only Mr. David Penzer. Mr. Penzer, sir, thank you so much for coming back on to Count It Out.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me. It only took 200 episodes, huh?
Yeah, we've come a long way since the last time that we talked, and I promise you I'm a little bit better since the last time we talked too. So I'm really looking forward to diving into some stuff with you today.
As someone who did a podcast for years that was as successful as I could have imagined, it's not Talk is Jericho for sure,
No.
but I understand, and it's always an evolution. And when I first started, it was the podcast Sitting Ringside, the name of the book that I just put out. But the podcast Sitting Ringside, not the book, started out totally different than it became. It took me about 6 to 8 weeks to get it to change the whole format of what we were planning on doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've constantly evolved over the last 4 years as well. We do like a top 7 countdown gimmick sometimes. We've evolved into a lot more interviews over the years. We're really into the independent scene now as well, and trying to shine light on that next generation. So, and picking the brains of legends like yourself. But
I don't know about legend. But
I honestly don't sell yourself short there, Mr. Penzer. You are one of the most recognizable voices. You're one of the voices of the Monday Night Wars. You think about yourself and Jim Ross, and you're in good company there. You are the soundtrack of one of the biggest boom periods in all of professional wrestling.
It's funny that you mentioned that. One of the things I talk about in the book is I never realized that until maybe like 5, 6, 7 years ago when I got active on Twitter and X, whatever it's called. And thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. I still don't know that comparing me to somebody like the legendary Jim Ross is apropos. But it's funny, people will say that every once in a while on Twitter, or even Brett Lauderdale, from the owner of Game Changer Wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
I met him a couple years ago, and they were down here before WrestleMania. And he's like, I used to do you. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, I used to do your voice. I said, what are you talking about? He said, I would introduce the matches like you introduced the matches. And I'm like, you're kidding me. He's like, no, I did it for years. So that's one of the things that we actually talk about in the book is it just blows me away. So thank you for saying that. And for anybody who, got a little bit of entertainment or, on my little part of WCW, much appreciated.
Well, I definitely hope that Brett Lauderdale's impersonation of you is better than Luke Gallows's, who I'm pretty sure is doing a Gary Michael Capetta the whole time.
Yeah. We figured that all out, but I don't care. Let him as long as he does the David Penzer impression. Let him do anybody he wants. He actually thought that was me, and then when I got to know him in Impact, even before that with the Talking Shop of Manias, I'm like, dude, I'm pretty sure you're doing Gary Michael Capetta. He's like, do you want me to change to say it's not you? Say it's me.
Exactly. Take it all. Take all all the credit you can, right?
Cool.
Well, let's jump right into the book, Dave. This is really exciting. Sitting Ringside, Volume 1, which makes me lead to believe hopefully there'll be a Volume 2. What made you decide that this was the time to put a book out there?
Well, I never thought I was going to write a book. People have asked me a lot, especially in this latest run with Impact. And I go out, through the crowds, to get to the cars, and almost every time I'd say you got to write a book, and I'd say no, my life is too boring. And how this started was I had saved a whole bunch of really cool formats and internal memos of WCW that I don't think anybody, for the most part, has ever seen before, in the general public. And I was trying to find a way on how to monetize that because I thought it was something that people would think is cool. I mean, one of them is the Last Nitro. To my knowledge, nobody's ever looked at the Last Nitro. And, if I'm a fan, I have a lot of questions. Was Vince's part and Shane's part in there? Was it kayfabed? And, if you buy my book, do you be able to see? And if you buy my book at davidpenzerbook.com, there's a way that you could get the book signed by me and Guy Evans, the co-author, who's did the incredible Joe book, and also Eric Bischoff's second autobiography. And I not only signed the book, but we'll sign the format of the Last Nitro and send it to you. There's a lot of cool things you could do with that other than looking at it. And you could get a lot of the players that are still around doing conventions and stuff to sign the Last Nitro format that they were on. So that's an option if you want to do that, davidpenzerbook.com. So I put something on Twitter as like a tease, how many people would in this? It was just a couple old formats and got a huge response. And one of the people that responded was Guy Evans. And he's like, we got to put out a scrapbook. And I said, okay, I said, if that's the best way you think to monopolize it, monetize it, sorry. And I said, he said, we could tell some stories, about some of the people on the book. And I was like, okay. So we started doing that. Then all of a sudden, about halfway through, he says, well, we're going to do 2 books in one. And I said, what are you talking about? I said, there's already a Volume 2. You're going to give that away? He goes, no. He said, we're going to do your autobiography and still do the scrapbook with all the formats and all the memos and all that stuff. And I said, I wasn't sure that people would want to hear my story, but I will tell you this. Guy Evans is such a talented writer. Mm-hmm. It was almost, it's funny. There's a couple times in the process of telling my story to him, I was like talking to a shrink. I realized things I had never thought of, like answers to questions, why did, Bob Roop's the first person to really get me involved in the business, and why did Bob Roop not stay close? And then I realized as I was telling him the story, and that's all in the book. But it was like a therapy session, but he did such a great job, and it's really an enjoyable read. If you want to buy it for all the crazy formats, the Last Nitro, the Vince Russo winning the world title, David Arquette winning the world title, which is not in that format what the finish was supposed to be when that format was released. So it's kind of interesting to see that. All the internal memos and stuff, if you want to just buy it for that, I won't be offended. hey, if you have some time, on an airplane or something, if you want to read the story, I think it's a cool story. It's a lot of insight into the people and my experience and the people behind WCW, especially like the announcers and the creative people who I really got to know. So I don't pull any punches, man. So DavidPenzerBook.com. Check it out. You could also go to Amazon.com and just put in Sitting Ringside. But the
I would
guy's the one who really put it all to. Huh?
Well, yeah, I was going to say I would highly recommend getting some of those extra tier packages that are available on davidpenzerbook.com because, like you said, these signed format sheets, there's not a lot of items like that out there. Like, where are you going to get a format, like you said, of the last Nitro? And there are guys out there that do these conventions, like the Stings and the Flairs and the Lance Storms, that are all still out there that you could get to sign this that were on that last Nitro. I think it's absolutely genius. I love the twists that you put on this book because not only is it your story, but it's also like a museum of WCW history at the same time.
Yeah, I guess I never realized how much I really, how much I really it, it took in. You know what I mean? It went by very, very, very quickly. I got to live my dream, and you'll see in the book how it got there. I mean, there's like 1,000,001 things that had to go right, and knock on wood. Uh, I'm so lucky because back in 1991, 1990, people who didn't have a relative who was a wrestler who weren't trained in a wrestling school as a referee or a wrestler weren't allowed into the back, weren't allowed to be a part of the business. And so many things had to go right, and thankfully they all did. There was a few blunders along the way, but I was able to turn those around and think on my feet real quick. And yeah, it's I'm not trying to brag, but it's an interesting story. And again, the I was looking through the formats again today. Some of the stuff is just fascinating. Old Disney formats and old WCW Saturday Night formats, and you could see how the whole business operated.
That's such a cool thing. And another cool thing I really like is the forward of the book is done by Kevin Sullivan, who's another legend. And what's your relationship with Kevin? Why was he the right guy to do it? And can you share any fun Kevin stories that you're at least able to tell on air?
I mean, Kevin, it's funny. It's almost a fait accompli that it was Kevin, because Kevin Sullivan was in the first match I ever saw live in the Fort Lauderdale National Guard Armory of May of 1977. It was in the semi-main teaming with Mike Graham, and it's. I mean, I got to know him. He took me under his wing. I was a fan of him as a wrestler. It's funny. There's very little footage of talked about Angle at the very, very end of Championship Wrestling from Florida as a territory, where Kevin sort of came out of the haze, came out of the fog, and then he was supposed to team with Dusty Rhodes, but he ended up teaming Jack Mulligan because of the politics of Jim Crockett was in the middle of negotiating to buy Championship Wrestling from Florida. So, but it was some of the most fascinating work I've seen in this business in almost 40 years of being around it, watching it as a fan and being involved in it. And so I'm just such a fan of that. And then I got to know him in WCW, and he took me under his wing. And he used to give me we would ride down the road together. He would give me I did a piece of paper, and he'd say, "Hey, Penzer, write this down." So I'd say, he'd say TV title match, Chris Jericho, who was the TV champion at the time. He's like, "Penzer, who do you think I could get a good match out of Chris Jericho with?" I'd say something. He'd like, "Yeah, but I don't want to beat him." I think I said, "How about Disco Inferno? That'd be okay." And so we booked the Nitro match.
Wow.
So how freaking cool is that? And he taught me a lot of life lessons. He's a very, very, very intelligent guy. It's just there's a whole chapter on him on my end, and it's just how instrumental he was in Hogan going heel, and how he formulated that relationship. It's just so much. So it was almost perfect. Evan wrote the forward, and I just sent him a text. I said, "Do you want to write the forward to my book?" He said, "Be an honor."
Oh,
And
so cool.
boom. So yeah, he's a big influence on me all throughout my entire wrestling journey. We still keep in touch to this day. And other than the Rays or the Red Sox, we pretty much are on the same page when it comes to most of our thoughts of the business, both in the territory days and through WCW, the Monday Night Wars, and then now. So we agree on a lot of stuff other than baseball teams.
Well, you mentioned the Rays and the Red Sox, and we're located right here out of Toronto, so we've got the Blue Jays in the mix here. But you had a pretty big night in Toronto last December. It was your last night with Impact / TNA Wrestling. How did the decision come to be for you that that it was time to move on from TNA and move on to the next chapter?
I didn't make that decision at all.
Oh.
Uh, Scott, after I'd say around summertime, it's about 6 months before my last shot, and Scott pulled me aside and he said, "I just want you to know that Jen Alexander, Jade Chung, is going to be doing from now on the what they call the Impact matches, which is now Explosion again."
Mm.
And he said, "I just want you to know that." And I said, "Well, is there something I need to worry about?" He said, "Well, not in the immediate future." I said, "All right, cool." He said, "You know, this thing's not going to last forever." And I said, "Well, when do you think I'm good till?" And he said, "Well, probably through the end of the year, at least." And sure enough, at the end of the year, I was done. And Jen is the ring announcer, and I passed her the microphone and wish her the best. She does a great job. And sort of kind of what a product like TNA, when they switched the brand over, needed. They didn't need a 57 going on 58-year-old ring announcer. Attractive woman who is in the ring, the matches, not only the main event but all the matches, and like a ring announcer should. So I have no hard feelings at all. It's going to come out on social media soon as part of this book blitz, but I have video of the footage of him afterward. No idea. I didn't think he needed to bring me to Toronto. Think about it. I mean, the girl who was taking over for me was in the building because her husband was wrestling and she lives, right there. So just to bring me to Toronto was because I never went on one-off shows. Like when they would do one-off shows, like a show in New Japan Pro Wrestling, I would never do those. They would just use somebody local. I would only do the double shots.
Mm.
So that was the first one I did and the last one I did. And at the end, like I said, Scott surprised me and all the wrestlers surrounded the ring, and I had no idea it was coming, and gave me a plaque and gave me a nice speech, and I had a little few things to say about the company, which I still to this day, even though Scott's not there, which is a shame. But it's a great group of people. If you're not watching TNA wrestling, God, they got a ton of talent, and they keep adding a ton of talent. I was advised at some of the names that popped up this past weekend for Rebellion. So give it a look. It's amazing what those people do on such a skeleton crew, and so yeah, I have no hard feelings at all. He gave me notice. He brought me in. He gave me something he didn't need to give me, which is recognition, which I didn't need, and I greatly appreciate that. I was humbled by it, and it gave me an opportunity to dive into my real estate business, which it's kind of hard when you're away every second or third weekend to be a realtor that you got to be there on the weekends. That's when the deal is done. So this had slacked a little bit, and so I dove headfirst into that in the book, and I appreciate it because I would have never walked away on my own. I'm in love with the business. I have been since I was 11 years old. But it was it ended up being the right thing for me in a lot of ways. I'm sad that Scott's not there anymore. I don't know the skinny on all that. He put so much into that company, and he's such a smart guy. But I can't control that. So be a fan and continue to watch and appreciate what they do as such a small group of people.
Yeah, we've been really, really big supporters of Impact Wrestling on this show over the last 4 years. We're very proud to be part of their media team as well. It's no secret, and I think Impact Wrestling has been putting on the best consistent weekly programming over the last 4 years, nonstop. But But it was really shocking to see Scott leave.
Before you go on, I didn't know you're on the media team. Next time you talk to Ross Foreman, ask him if he misses me.
I will. I'll send him an email and ask him. He'll probably tell me to hit the bricks, but
Yeah, he
Ross
probably will.
Ross is hilarious. I can't say enough good things about Ross Foreman and the growth that he's helped us with this show. And you know, he's given us little pointers that he didn't have to do and given us advice and hooked us up with some amazing interviews. So big shout out to Ross Foreman there.
Well, I worked
100%.
with him in WCW and then TNA and then Impact, now TNA again. His journey in a lot of ways, I think he kind of followed me around, or maybe I followed him around. I'll say I followed him around.
When we get off, when we finish with the interview off air, you'll have to tell me some good Ross stories so I can have a little bit of dirt on him for a good interview.
No.
No, that's probably smart. We don't want any Ross heat. I'd love to get your opinion though about another great ring announcer doing work right now, and that's Samantha Irvin in the WWE. What do you think of the job she's been doing?
I love her. I think it's crazy that she doesn't know who's going to win. I don't know how that works. I heard that she purposely doesn't look at it. At first, I thought maybe she wasn't given the format, which is crazy. But WWE does things in a different way. I remember Justin Roberts on my podcast, and he never had an IFB, which is an earpiece. You could see like rock bands or like ring announcers and stuff, or if they don't have a headset, they have a little piece in their ear. It's called an IFB. Somewhere in the City Ringside book, guy defines what that means, and I didn't know for 30 years, and I still can't remember what it means, but there's actual 3 words for it. But it's just an earpiece so the truck could talk to you and you could hear the announcers and stuff like that if they pitch to you. And WWE ever, I don't think they do now, has their ring announcers wear an earpiece. Somebody that is on a headset ringing the bell cues the ring announcers. So and that blew my mind. So, when I saw that she was surprised by finishes of WrestleMania, I was like, here, if they don't give the ring announcer a format, it seems crazy, but they're kind of strange when it comes to the whole ring announcing thing. But no, she's great. I jumped on the bandwagon way before everybody else did, so I just want to say that. I became a big Bloodline fan of the story of the Bloodline. It all started out, I don't know if you remember, there was one where Jay couldn't stop laughing, Jay Uso.
Yeah.
So I watched that. And I watched that. So I DVR'd the next SmackDown, and man, what a story that was and continues to be. I was not really a big WWE fan at the time. I was watching. I was on Impact. I was watching a little bit of AEW, and not really WWE, but the storytelling of that and some of the other stories that they told us. Cody Rhodes finishing the story, The Rock turning heel, the Bloodline, all that really got me back into the product. I could sort of fast forward through it. I'm not going to sit there and watch hours of matches, but I'll watch the promos and the angles and stuff like that. And if you read the book, if you buy the book and read it, you'll know that that's something since I was 11 years old that I was always attracted to. The matches to me were secondary. It was the promos and the angles that mesmerized me, and they still do to this day, obviously. But no, Samantha is great. Just hope she doesn't get a big head because it's easy, and I talk about that in City Ringside. It's easy to get a little bit of a big head, but I hope she doesn't. I hope she stays humble. And she's incredible. I love the emotion, and I couldn't pull that off. He pulls it off and does a great job, and is changing the ring announcing really in some ways. The emotion that she has is I've never seen in a ring announcer, that kind of emotion. I'm not just talking about like crying when, Cody won the belt, just the emotion of just building up the whole match when she does the in-ring champion moves. I mean, it's unbelievable. I give her nothing but props, and I wish her the best of luck. She's going to go far, and I don't know, maybe someday she'll, they say I always say this: Howard Finkel's the greatest ring announcer, and everybody else is way back on the list. Howard's like up on the top of the mountain, and everybody else is down at the bottom, trying to scramble to find their spot. But you never know. I remember after WrestleMania, people were, she's the greatest ring announcer in WWE history. And I said, well, hold on, guys. I said, she's doing a great job, but she has big shoes to fill. Howard Finkel's best of all time, not even close. And people were like, yeah, you're right, but maybe someday she will be the best of all time. It's possible.
Absolutely,
She's
it
on a
is.
hell of a run and she's doing great. And that's a company that doesn't usually feature the ring announcers. So she's obviously doing something right. And that's getting people to notice her, not only in the audience, but behind uh, the gorilla position.
Yeah, I'm with you on your stance on the WWE. When the last time that we had you on the show about 4 years ago, I wasn't a big fan of the product either. I was watching it still because I'm a wrestling fan, and even I watch what I like and I fast forward what I don't like. I don't bitch about it because I love wrestling. If I don't enjoy something, I don't watch it. But the Bloodline really
Sure,
got me
sure.
going again. Cody got me going again, and exciting moments like seeing Jordan Gray show up in the Royal Rumble really gets me going again. What do you think about seeing TNA Knockouts champion Jordan Gray show up in the Royal Rumble?
I really wish it didn't get leaked. I didn't know it until it got leaked. I really wish it didn't, because as much of a buzz as it became had, it would have been even a bigger buzz if it was a true surprise. That's one of the things in this business right now. A lot of people talk about, oh, the high flying, and it looks like it's acrobatics, and you should grab a hold, and look, that was great when I grew up, and the wrestling business has evolved. One thing though I do really like is when you could be genuinely surprised by something. I'll never forget, and we talk about it in the books at Ringside at davidpenzerbook.com. We talk about when Roddy Piper's music hit after, I believe, Halloween Havoc.
Yeah.
And huge Roddy Piper fan growing up. Later got to know Roddy really pretty well, as well as anybody could get to know him, because I was on a tour bus with him for 40 days. Um, but I marked. I mean, I'm sitting there as the ring announcer of the pay-per-view, and I just marked out, and that's fun. You don't always need to know everything. Um, I know that it's hard now with the internet, and everybody wants to get their spoiler, and it's a business, and I know people want to be the first people to get to get the information out, and I respect that. I really do. But sometimes it's just fun to be surprised. I mean, when they did TNA did the whole and go out who's going to be in the ring thing, and they brought Sami Callihan out earlier in the show, and everybody thought, oh, cool, Sami Callahan's back. That's a surprise. Well, then after the main event, the lights went out, and broken Matt Hardy was in the ring. And that's super cool, man, because at that point you're saying, okay, the surprises are done. The lights went out. Sami Callihan is back. That's super cool. Big Sami fan. And then lights go out again, and Matt Hardy, who nobody would have ever thought in a million years, at least me, that would even be in discussions with a company like right now. So that's fun, man. That's fun. And if that would have been spoiled, that would have sucked.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing I always respected about the locker room in the office of TNA is amazing. When we were doing during the empty arena tapings, nothing ever got out. Not one spoiler ever got out. Now spoilers get out now because they take the TV obviously in front of the crowd, but there's nobody in there who will say a thing to anybody. And if you know professional wrestling business, that's pretty freaking amazing. That just shows how much they love the company, because people like to talk and tell people things and be the one to in their mind they could say, I was the one who let blank know that Matt Hardy was going to be the second surprise. Nobody cares. They just want this company to be successful. It's a really cool vibe.
Absolutely, it is. Another really cool vibe earlier this year was the AEW putting on Sting's final match, Greensboro Coliseum. What was it like to work with such an icon like Sting back in the WCW days? And how did you think that his final match, whole spectacle went?
First of all, if I'm being honest, I tried to get in on that.
Oh yeah.
I was done with Impact, and I called Shivani, and then I talked to Chris Jericho too. He lives right around down the road from me, and they all both thought it was a great idea. And Tony Khan really wanted to stick with Justin because he's a Justin guy, and Justin was, and I had total respect for that. And there's no anger or frustration or disappointment. I just threw my head in my hat in the race, and thought about it and decided to go with what he did, and I think it worked. And one of the reasons was it was a tag team match with in-ring intros. So it's like at that point I'm introducing the Young Bucks and Darby Allin, and it just becomes awkward. If it was just Sting against one other person and I could go in there and introduce Sting, I think that would have been a really cool experience. But the whole presentation, the whole kind of match it was, and how it was, the intros were presented were tough. And so I think ultimately Tony made the right decision. Although I would have loved to have been a part of it. Sting is awesome, great guy. Never got too big for his britches. Always with a smile on his face. Most of the time when I'd see him, everybody has their moments. Uh, but um, but yeah, great guy, great career. I thought the match presentation of of the intros with him in the cinema and all that was absolutely unbelievable. Kudos, whoever did that, great stuff. I'll be honest with you, not a big fan of Glass.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of lost me on that. They kind of lost me on the Glass. Don't need it. He's an icon. He's his last match ever. You don't need it. He didn't need it. If that's what he wanted, then that's his decision. That's his legacy. I'm glad his kids got to be involved. That was super cool. I'm not, all due respect to my buddy Brett Lauderdale, table chairs, thumbtacks, yeah, that's okay. But when we start getting to glass and light bulbs and stuff, you just lose me. That's me. I've had this discussion with many people on Twitter and in dressing rooms, and Masha Slamovich and I used to argue about this back in fact, because she's really into that whole thing. And look, I respect her, and especially what she puts her body through. And I respect, I respect that genre. It's just not for me. It's just not something I don't want to see light bulbs in a wrestling show, broken glass. So you're just getting to places where you got a huge chance of really getting screwed up or screwing your opponent up or the referee, and it's just not my thing. So I thought the presentation for Sting with his sons out there and the intro, the cinema and all that was super cool. As far as the match goes, like I said, I didn't turn it off when the glass came out, but it just kind of took a little of the excitement for me out of watching the way it went down.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one too. Like, if that's your guys' thing, then that's your guys' thing, and I respect it. But I'm with you. It's not my favorite thing to see. Especially now that I've started ring announcing on the independent level, like I get worried watching the guys out there now, and the more I become friends with the people in the dressing room, like I don't want to see them take these big crazy bumps because I care about their safety.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I have like 7,500 followers on Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter at David Penzer. But every once in a while I'll put something up and it'll get some traction. And the one that got the most traction, because wrestlers were starting to retweet it, was somebody put a picture at WrestleMania of I guess they would use wooden or fiberglass ladders, and they paint them to look like steel ladders.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody put a picture and they were like, "Oh, these guys are a bunch of lame asses." I simply wrote back, if it's better for the guy's health and well-being, who gives a shit? Who gives
Absolutely.
a crap? I don't care. The whole wrestling business is deception and illusions, and that's the whole business. It's not like, it's like everything's on the up and up except for the ladder is painted. And I think at one point it had almost 1 million views. Now I don't know what entails a view on Twitter, but it was probably the most viral thing I ever sent out. It was just something so simple. I mean, those guys have families, and they're going to get older, and I've seen it. I've seen guys like Harley Race pay the price, and so many people, now that I grew up watching and got to know in the business, and now they're paying a price for the bumps and the bruises and the chair shots to the head and that kind of stuff. And man, this is unfortunately or fortunately, whatever your opinion is, now we know this is all a work. The matches are predetermined, but it doesn't mean that they don't go out of their way and do things that would hurt a mere mortal, maybe kill a mere mortal sometimes with the chairs and all that kind of stuff. But we all know now that it's predetermined and all that. So who cares if it's a wooden chair painted like a metal chair? It almost seems apropos.
It's funny that you say that too. And on a sidebar off here, Last year, we took a road trip up to Windsor, Ontario to watch the Sacrifice event. It was the weekend where Josh was hurt and had to relinquish the title. And there was incredible matches that whole weekend. Impact Wrestling always does a great job. Now, my favorite match of the whole weekend was the pre-show dark match. I had a couple gimmicks in me, so I was feeling pretty good. But the pre-show dark match was between Johnny Swinger and a friend of mine, Reverso. And they had this fantastic match. And I think Swinger maybe took 2 bumps the whole match, but his presence was so incredible. Like less is more sometimes, in my opinion.
Oh well, Swinger's gimmick is incredible and so entertaining. I always get a kick out of it. I miss that it's not there. I don't know what his status is. I haven't talked to him in a while, but I think he kind of disappeared the same time as I did. I don't know if that was on purpose or just booking, but he's so entertaining and he puts so much thought into it and and how to get little pops. He'll drop a name from the territories or something like that. That's nowhere in the, not that the promos are scripted in Impact, but they give a general sort of overview of what they're going to be talking about. And he just comes up with this stuff these names and stuff that pops people. He pops the entire room when he does it. So yeah, it's a different style, and you know why it works for him? Because he's the only one doing it. If there was 40 people doing that style in Impact Wrestling, nobody would like it. But he's the only one doing it. He's doing the gimmick of being old school, being the old vet, and living in the past, and wearing the fanny pack, and talking in carny, and he's the only one doing it. So that's why it stand out. And does a great job. I hope they bring him back.
100%. I couldn't agree with you more. Now, I want to talk about some moments from your career in a minute here, but before we do that, I'd love to ask about one more new superstar. She's been around for just over a year with Impact Wrestling now. It's somebody who I've had the pleasure to get to announce as well. One half of the Knockouts Tag Team Champions, Jody Threat. What do you think about Jody and the work that she's been doing? And have you had a chance to get to talk to Jody at all?
Yeah, I had a couple of vodkas with down in the lobby. She's a vodka person, and I'm a vodka person. So we had a couple of drinks down in the lobby. She's a nice girl. She's very unique, which I think is cool. Not cookie cutter in any way. I love her in Spitfire. I just love those two together. They're so perfect together. You couldn't have scripted it any better, so to speak. But yeah, very extremely nice girl, extremely respectful to all the people in the to all the talent, to all the production people, to all the management people, writers, and so I look to see what the future holds for her. She's, like I said, very unique style, very unique look, and I'd like, I think big things will happen for her if she keeps doing what she's doing.
Yeah, she's phenomenal. The promotion that I do work for, it's a promotion called Barry Wrestling, and that was one of her home promotions breaking in. So Jody, next time you come up to Barry, I'm gonna have to get a bottle of vodka ready for us, I think.
Yeah, when she debuted, and it was also in Toronto earlier than that. Her mother was sitting right behind where I was sitting, so it was fun to see how excited her mom got and how loud she was cheering and how emotional she got. That's always super cool because, like I said, there's a lot of people who dream about doing this in various forms or fashion, whether it be ring announcing or refereeing or play-by-play or wrestling. And it's a lot easier to get there now, but it's not as easy. It's not still not easy to get there on the next level, if you know what I speak, what I mean. Indies is a level, TNA is a level. WWE obviously is the biggest, but you sort of have to climb the ladder. And a lot of people could, there's a lot of people right now who could go to a wrestling school and go do a match in front of 50 people in Wilmington, North Carolina. I'm just throwing out city out of the top of my head. And I have mad respect for those people because they're living their dreams. And you know what? A lot of them knew that they may not ever be, a big name, but they went out there and they tried and they lived their dream and they enjoyed it. My story is interesting because it was just so much hard and it was a totally different business. And it just took a lot of determination and a ton of luck and some divine intervention, I think. But but yeah, good for her. And she's on her way. Goes is up to her and her ability and how she learns and processes things. And you can never predict. You can't predict where people are going to end up. But yeah, she has all the potential in the world for sure.
Absolutely. I'd love to ask you a question here. And doing my research for this, I watched some of your older interviews, and I noticed that you mentioned that you traveled a lot with Eddie and Dean and Chris Benoit and that group of people. What was your memories like going back to the night when they decided to leave and jump over to the WWE? I don't think I've ever heard you talk about that before.
Buy the book.
Oh, wonderful. See that segued into
Buy the
my
book.
next that segues into my next thing I want to
There's
do
a
with you here.
there's a dozen pages, if not more, of my involvement in that. And that was long story short, without you can read the details in the book. I begged them not to leave. They didn't trust Kevin Sullivan, and that was that. But the whole story of how that went down and my confliction with Kevin being my friend and those guys being my friends. Look, if you look at history, it was the right thing to do for everybody but Shane Douglas.
Yeah.
Uh,
Sure.
uh, you know, so, but they, at the time they had said we might regret this, but we're going to do it. Nobody's changing our mind. So it ended up being the right thing. So good on them. But yeah, that whole story in detail in the book. City
Awesome.
Ringside, Volume 1, davidpenzerbook.com.
So this kind of brings me into my next little thing I want to do with you then, because I think the book is so perfectly named because you have had the best seat in the house for some of the greatest moments in professional wrestling history. So I'd love to ask you about some of these moments. And if there's a good story in the book about it, instead of telling us a story here, give us the website again where you can buy the book and we can move on to the next point. How does that sound?
Am I plugging it too much?
No, there's no such thing as plugging it right too much.
This is the first piece of media I've done. I have a bunch of interviews all throughout the next few weeks, but this is the first piece of media I've done promoting the book. So I'm going to have Guy Evans, who's the czar, listen to it and give me his critique. But yeah, davidpenzerbook.com, all one word. And you could also go to Amazon and get it there, free shipping on both sites. And if you go to davidpenzerbook.com, there's some really cool opportunities if you want to upgrade to some cool packages where you sent some of the formats and the memos we were talking about. There's been a lot of interest in that, actually, a lot more than I would have thought. I was surprised by that. So yeah, check it out.
All right, well, I'm going to ask you about a couple cool moments here, and if there's a good story in the book, then let's hit the website again so people know where they can hear the story. I don't want to take away from the book today, all right? I gotta ask you about working the Talkin' Shop-A-Mania shows. How much fun did everybody have hanging out at Gallows's house, putting on that ridiculously entertaining and hilarious show?
Well, that'll be in volume 2. So I guess we ended when WCW went out of business, and my experiences with that, both emotionally and professionally. Um, and so we'll start off with that and go into detail about the XWF and TNA and Talking Shop-A-Mania and the stuff that I was doing with them. It was a blast. Those guys are so fun. Gallows is Gallows. Rocky is very underappreciated as making them kind of all gel together. Most talk about Gallows and Anderson because they're the ones on there. Although Rocky's been on TV a lot recently, but they're the ones, the faces of the podcast. But Rocky's really the one that holds the whole thing together. And it was a blast. There was no script. There was no paper. There was no nothing. I was making up lines as I went along, and Carl Edison kept getting such a kick out of my lines. He would have me like do 2 or 3, and then only one would make the pay-per-view. Cuss words, and it was, if you saw it, it was a blast. And I'm referring to, if you didn't, if you got a Saturday night with nothing going on, you might want to see if that's still available because it was really fun. It was during COVID, so everybody was, nobody knew what to expect. It was just a bunch of old friends and new friends hanging out, doing whatever everybody else does, and talking about old times and putting together a fun, I don't even know if you'd call it a pay-per-view, just a fun, kind of goofy, wacky show. And it's actually one of the things I'm most proud of. It's easy to do the David Penzer WCW shtick because good evening, fill in the blank. Let me see some posters. Don't forget to go to the souvenir stand, see the new Sting t-shirt, that kind of stuff. This one was totally off top of my head, and anything was fair game. So, I mean, and I'm not just talking with me, I'm talking with anybody that was doing a promo or anything or a match. So, you really had to work hard to try to pop a guys that, it's hard to pop. So I wear that as a badge of honor.
We had Rory Fox on our show shortly after that, and he told us some story. Rory's a great guy. He's a friend of the show now for sure. We've had him on a couple of times. He told us a couple stories, but do you have a favorite moment from that night that is able to be told on air? Because I know Rory said there was a lot of things that were going to be left to die in that room, I guess, so to speak, or in that house.
Yeah, I better not. I better not. I'll just say it was great to see everybody, the camaraderie, the fun we had. You think about it, this is the first thing that happened. I mean, this is before I went to Impact with COVID. And back then, we didn't know if we were going to die. People look at COVID and now, sort of understand. People have different opinions of what COVID was and how it was handled, and that's fair. But back then, we didn't know if like everybody was going to go, the world was going to go extinct. People were washing their the stuff from the grocery store in their front yard before they brought it in the house. Well, we all know, looking back, there was no need for that, but nobody knew. Everybody's just trying to figure it out. So to be able to get away from that insanity and just the timing was perfect. That wouldn't have worked if there was no COVID. There had to be COVID for that to work. And I've always I try to convince them to do a third one. And Carl Anderson's the last I heard, I don't speak to those guys as often anymore, but last I heard, Carl was the holdout. They all have to agree to do it, and Carl was the holdout. He thought, let it rest on its laurels. So he might be right, but God, it would be fun to do something like that again.
Well, anytime I bring up Talking Shop, I got to just say shout out Rory Fox because he's the man. Good dude. He
And
is.
the podcast is back.
Yeah, I listened to that this morning actually in the office there. I was listening to that. So that's fun stuff too.
Yeah. Look forward to listening to it.
I got a couple more for you here before we let you go. And again, if it's in the book, plug the website again and we can move on to a different point. But any fun stories involving Dennis Rodman's time in WCW? It's so crazy that guy was on Monday Nitro skipping practice during the NBA championships.
The funniest thing is I had a lot of pictures. Our friend Ross Foreman, it's funny, you didn't have a camera on your phone. You didn't have a phone. So you got to remember what the timing was. But there's no such thing as cell phones at that time. They had the big Paulie Dangerously, thing that he used to carry around. That was a phone, but wireless phone, but there was no cell phones and there certainly were no cameras in them. So Ross would always be the one to take the pictures of everybody with the celebrities. And I'm not like an autograph guy. I can't think of one person I'd want their autograph, but I want a picture. Even if they're just standing there and they don't say 3 words to me, I just wanted to be able to remember the time and the how cool it was. And I never got around Rodman. Rodman was pretty shielded back then. So I didn't. Out of all the people, I got a picture with Leno. I got a picture with so many of the celebrities they brought in, but I never got a picture with Rodman. I don't know that I said 3 words to Rodman. To be honest with you, so sorry to disappoint you on that. I'm as much of a mark when it comes to the whole Rodman thing as anybody because I don't know that I ever I maybe walked by him a couple of times.
Is it true? And I don't know. I've just heard the folk tale of this, but is it true that he actually fell asleep on the ring apron during that Bass at the Beach match?
I don't know what's exactly falling asleep and closing your eyes because you're bored or blowed up. So something went down there. I don't want to talk for him, but something a little strange went down there. I don't know if he actually really fell asleep, but he had partied like the night before, and wrestling's a lot easier said than done. The pace that these guys go, even guys like Hulk and and like that go. Diamond Dallas Page is a little faster pace, but it's hard. The cardio is hard. You got to work up to it. I've seen guys that some of the best in the business in their time, and they come back to do like a farewell match or a farewell tour, and they blow the hell up. Uh, it's they say that there's being in shape and then there's being in ring shape, and it takes a long time to get in ring shape. So I think that between him going out, not sleeping that night, and trying to even though he's a basketball player, runs up and down the court, it's a different kind of cardio. So
Absolutely. So Dave, you've been great with your time. I just have two last quick questions for you here before we let you go on. So as I mentioned throughout this, I'm a new ring announcer. I've been ring announcing for about a year and a half, give or take. And I've just you're somebody that I've always looked up to, and I've been really lucky to have one of your mentors as well, Gary Michael Capetta, on the show. And I cannot have one of my favorite ring announcers of all time on the show and not ask for any type of advice or pointers that you can give to fellow ring announcers out there. What kind of advice can you give to us newcomers to trying to hone our crafts, if you will, I guess?
I would just say try to entertain the crowd. It means a lot. The things that you don't think means a lot mean a lot. What you say in between a match, whether it's promoting what's to come or merch or getting the crowd, making sure the crowd is still excited and knows what's coming up. That's underrated. That could add or subtract to a positive or a negative experience at a wrestling show. I'm not, it's everything, because it's certainly not. It's most of the performances in the ring, the production, stuff like that. But that's a small part of it. So be cognizant of the fact that you're basically their guide for that night, for that show. And, put a lot into how you can make them more knowledgeable about the product, excited about what's to come, promote sponsors and things, upcoming shows. In some ways, that's as important as anything to a promoter. You want to have good work, and they want to have professional reps, and they want to have good lighting, but they also want to be sure those sponsors are mentioned many times, and they want to make sure that fans know where to be, where they're going next. So it's important stuff.
I'm glad you said that, because I was actually having a conversation with some people at the last show I did, and that is the biggest area that I want to work on, is my in-between match banter. I know that it is important, but I feel like that's the area that I need to get better on. So I really appreciate that advice. Thank you, Dave.
Sure, man. I mean, if most people know, when I was in and the explanation behind it is in the book, but most people know you didn't hear me on TV very often. And the whole explanation behind how that went down and all that, what was said to me and conveyed, but is in the book. So my job, my literally only job, was to entertain the crowd, because you couldn't hear me on TV for the most part. So, I mean, that's how I came to make that into some, realize, look, Samantha Irvin, we talked about her earlier. She's getting a lot of attention for stuff she doesn't say in between the matches. And she's, like I said, she has an emotion and a style that's revolutionary and really sucks you in. It's infectious. But most ring announcers aren't like that. Most ring announcers, they need to show their personality through their interactions with the crowd and their promotions of the shows. Like I said, people pay a lot of money to sponsor some of these shows, and if they don't get a good plug here and there, they ain't gonna pay the next show, and the promoter's gonna be annoyed. So to me, that's as important as how good the matches are and the production is putting over the sponsors and the promotion, any merchandise, stuff like that, because that's all important. And we're the only ones who could say that. Wrestlers can go out and tell their own stories in many different ways, but really the ring announcer is the only one who has the opportunity to get that kind of information over to the crowd.
That's great advice, and I'm sure that there's all kinds of great stuff in the book sitting ringside, available at davidpenzerbook.com. David, the last question I like to ask all of our guests before we take it home here. You've done a lot, and I know a lot of it's going to be covered in this great book of yours. But when you take a look back at everything you've done, Do you have like a personal moment that just makes you happy to think about or makes you smile?
There's some, there's some, and some would go in the book. The whole Nitro, the whole Horseman reunion in Greenville, South Carolina. Uh, Scott Hall walking down the steps and making George and cutting that promo that changed the entire business. It still blows me away that he took my microphone. I was holding that microphone, and he took it away. It's such a small thing. It's sort of a markish thing to say, but still, I mean, that was my microphone grabbed, and I got to see that in person and enjoy the whole ride in person, and it's chronicled in the book, sitting ringside. But some stuff in TNA that and the rise of Josh Alexander has been something really special as a singles wrestler. He's a fantastic talent, and some of the great matches that they put on in front of no wrestling fans, which is way harder than you could even imagine. To not be able to feed off the inner crowd, especially when you're taking bumps and bruises, is something that's way harder than anybody could ever imagine. And just a lot of memories like that. We don't go into the Impact stuff until book volume 2, but we do all the WCW stuff, and Rey Mysterio debuting and shutting up any critic who thought he was too small when they saw him in about 20 seconds. It was stuff like that I'll never forget, and to see Rey still doing it on a level is so much fun. What a great guy! He changed the business in so many ways for the better, and he's such a class act. So,
And his son now too. Unbelievable work
yeah,
Dominic's doing.
yeah, I met him at Ric Flair's last match pay-per-view, and nice kid. Um, I remember him when he was 3 years old, so that's just how the world goes, is people, life goes on, and it's great that they could team together and then feud against each other and get the family involved, and it's a beautiful family, and he's a guy, and I'm sure Dominic is as well. He gets huge heat for such a young guy in the business, so kudos to him. I don't care if the boos are Mike Tyre or not. They're still boos.
Mhm.
They're not putting in booze. They're only turning the volume up. And I don't even think that's true, by the way, but I don't have any inside knowledge of whether it is or not. Anyway, but yeah, stuff like that, the Flair and the Horseman stuff was really special to me for a lot of reasons. I rode with Rick and Arn for a while, and Arn for a lot of my tenure in WCW. Anderson, the referee who grew up with him in Rome, Georgia, as childhood friends, kind of put the three of us together as a car riding duo. And there was a reason they all wanted to ride with me, and it wasn't because I was the best looking guy, or and you could see in the book why people wanted to ride with me. It's not hard to figure out, but it's better than paying for the rental car, so to speak. So I got my room paid for, me at the end, me and Pee Wee and me and Arn and me and so many of the guys that were riding with me that might have been, looking for to save some money, became great friends, family friends, even with Pee Wee not here anymore for a long time. My wife and his wife and kid still touch base, keep in touch on Facebook. So,
Nice.
so what started as, and it helped me too, as I said, one of the things I say in the book is, he taught me the road. I gave him saved him some money, and it was a perfect deal. And then he later brought Arn in, who's one of the funniest guys in the world. And then Bobby Eaton would join us, and Flair, when Pee Wee left, Flair would jump in for about a year, and I've had some fun times, man. I'm very, very blessed, and I think if you buy the book and read it, and I think that you'll see that it's crazy, crazy ride that probably couldn't be duplicated back in the days. But I'm extremely lucky and grateful and blessed to have lived my dream.
Well, we've been incredibly lucky and blessed to have you on this show today. Thank you for coming back
Thank you
again.
very much.
Please, one more time, tell the people all about the book, where they can get it, the name of the book, and any social medias that you want to plug.
Sitting Ringside, Volume 1. You get 2 books in one. You get a scrapbook with mostly never before incredibly rare formats, including including the last Nitro, the format of the Thunder, where David Arquette won the world title, a lot of old Saturday night formats and Disney formats, and you can see how the sausage is made, even more than you get to see it, through the internet and the websites and stuff like that. And then for good measure, you could throw in my story. And I don't tell a lot about my story. That only lasts a couple chapters, and the rest is just my memories of WCW and being in there and the different talent involved. We talk a lot about the announcers. You look back, that was the most incredible group of announcers that have ever been in this business, and probably because of the nature of the business will probably ever be. You had Bobby Heenan, you had Gene Okerlund, you had Larry Zbyszko, Tony Schiavone, excuse me, you had help me out here,
Scott Hudson
Mike
was
Tenay.
there, Mike Tenay.
I mean, think about it, it's just incredible. And some of the funnest times I've ever had in my life were sitting, and there's a whole chapter on this, was sitting in the announcer's trailer at the end, when Nitro got hot, they got us a trailer. It'd be like a tour bus almost kind of thing. And to sit in the announcer's trailer and just be a fly on the wall and listen to those guys tell stories and rib each other. And it was just, man, if you want to hear about it, you can buy the book once again, davidpenzer.com or amazon.com, sitting ringside, volume 1. Come join me on my journey in life at David Penzer on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. I'm on Instagram, but I don't have as much of a presence there. I'm trying hard to build that up. And I'm on Facebook. I think it's David Penzer WCW. You can just type in my name, and it's me. You'll see me in my real estate picture.
Absolutely.
So,
and while
come
you're
on by, join the fun, man. We're just reliving the old days and commenting, yeah, on what's going on now, and telling stories, and I'll continue to do that even though my book is out. We'll continue to if something comes up that wasn't in the book, I'll continue to tell those tales as I did today.
Absolutely, and we appreciate that. And when you're throwing David Penzer's book into your cart there, make sure to throw Nitro by Guy Evans in there as well, because that's a hell of a read too. You guys are quite the team.
Guy Evans is so talented. I am so lucky to have hooked up with him. It just, you talk about this ride, this incredible, and the luck continues, even in being hooked up with him. And it was totally random. Like I said, I put something on Twitter, and he responded, and we had a conversation. But that Nitro book, it's just incredible. The amount of people that he got to speak to him on the record. I didn't remember. I remembered him when I heard the name, but there were some people that I would be like, when I was reading the book, I'd be like, how the hell did he find that guy? That guy, how do you find, Harvey Schiller and people like that to write a book about WCW? They probably never want to think about it again, but he got them all to go on the record. And that I got out of it, I will tell you, the thing I got the most out of it is that we didn't have a chance. The ratings weren't good, and a lot of the talent was running the asylum, so to speak, a lot of it. But none of that matters. Once Turner lost his power, we were dead on arrival. It wouldn't matter if we had the greatest TV ratings and we're making money hand over fist. They didn't want pro wrestling on their networks, and so that's it's an incredible. If you think mine is insightful on the WCW journey, be sure to buy his if you haven't already, because he strips it down to the studs, big time.
Absolutely. Well, David, I can't thank you enough on behalf of Sitting Ringside, on behalf of DavidPenzerBook.com, and on behalf of yourself, Mr. Penzer. You have been counted out.